Thanks, Dee. My name is Amanda Gress, and I work in our Human Resources Department. Technically, my title is Onboarding and Orientation Coordinator. So what we're talking about today is like right in my wheelhouse, the piece of my job that actually I love the most. So I'm excited to talk about with you guys that today. Dario mentioned a little bit already about what we do at Wisper. For sure, we are an internet service provider. So that's like our end game, our end product. When I think about what we do at Wisper, it's all about on the people side of things. A big piece of that for sure is serving our customers and how we work very hard to try and provide really great service to them, both with the internet itself and with our customer support. On the employee side, though, I think there's a lot to be said about the way we treat our employees. And at the end of the day, the human factor in everything we do is huge here at Wisper. So not just an internet service provider, for sure. Sure. So in general, onboarding is about how you integrate a new employee into your company. And Dario, you're absolutely right that there are some times when employees are onboarded very, very quickly, and other companies take a little more time, and there's maybe a different intent behind that. I don't know that we have truly put a definition to the way Wisper onboards. I hope it's more of like a feeling of support and essentially like having someone walk with you through an entire process rather than, hey, you're here, get in the seat and get to work kind of deal. That's really the approach we're trying to completely steer away from. So we do follow that definition of integrating a new employee into the company, but I like to think of it as a very, very holistic approach. We are very intentional about our onboarding with the actual orientation that employees go through with myself, but then they also spend quite a bit of time specifically going through in-house training before they're even released into their departments to start departmental training. And a lot of our orientation encompasses stuff that is like the less tangible things, right? So it's not so much about like the tasks or the processes right there in the beginning. It gives people a different kind of overview about who we are as a company. So I think we are different in many ways, but the purpose of integration is the same. So essentially at the point that an employee is hired on, we kind of mark that like transition point from where it goes from the hiring process to the onboarding process pretty much as soon as an offer letter is accepted. And so somebody is saying, yes, I want to come work with you guys. And it then hands off from the person who in HR was serving as their hiring point of contact. And I serve as their point of contact from those pre-start days all the way through essentially their first 90 days with the company. That handoff, in my opinion, is very, very important. That is really their first look at us as an employee, right? So yes, I've made this choice, this big choice to want to come work with you guys. And what we need to do at that point is make sure that it's handled very, very smoothly. From there, the approach that I kind of take with this is multiple touches and as personalized as possible. Obviously, with every new hire, there are specific sets of information that we do have to get in order to be able to get people put into our HR system and in order to get what we need for them to start with us. But this is very much like me reaching out to them and making sure if you have questions, I want you to know that I'm here. Here's a cell phone number that if it's over the weekend, contact me and go through that process. So there are sometimes like just a couple of weeks in between that time frame when they accept their offer letter and when they start with us. And sometimes just depending on what the situation is, maybe it's a little bit longer. Maybe it's closer to the 3 or 4 week mark. And that's a really long time to not hear from anybody at your new place of work. And what I try and do is just send a couple of smaller messages along the way so that they don't feel lost, not totally overwhelmed, but also not lost along the way. In the beginning, before a person even like starts with us, there's obviously a set of new hire paperwork that has to be completed, right? That goes with every job, your direct deposit information, your personal info, tax info, all of that good stuff. We actually take care of that up front. Prior to that person's first day, we send this through our portal. They complete all that stuff online. And it didn't really necessarily click with me until relatively recently. And that's one of those things like, I do this as part of my job, so sometimes I have my blinders on. I had a new hire ask me recently, like, so I've done all my paperwork. What's the purpose of me coming in for orientation? And for me, that was the clue in like, I need to do a better job of explaining to people up front, like, what is the purpose of orientation? Because you're right, the paperwork side of things is done. And for many people, that is what they're used to. They come in, they talk to HR, they do their paperwork, and then they go to their department to start training and start working. For us, we get all of that paperwork completed up front. We also spend a lot of time prepping behind the scenes. This is all the stuff that most new hires don't see with us, but we work very, very hard to make sure that their laptops are fully set up and essentially like ready to open up and start rocking from the day that they start with us. We really work hard to try and make essentially like a very welcoming environment. So it is a matter of ensuring that they have things that are Wisper specific, but also maybe personalized with their name on it, supplying them with what they need on that first day. And it may seem super simple, but like giving them pens and earbuds, and here's the folder, and here's some printouts of the stuff that I know you're going to need within the next couple of days. And all of that takes setup on the back end. So we're working through all of those steps kind of quietly and blindly before someone even starts with us. But I truly consider that part of like the onboarding process as well, as ready and ready to just run as soon as they come in. Day one, their orientation day, their morning is spent with me. And it may feel for some people that it's a long time. We spend about 4 hours in orientation. And I can tell you, like, I don't hold them hostage for 4 hours. We do take a couple of breaks because I don't want to force anyone to hear me ramble on for 4 hours straight. But it is a very like compact 4 hours where we are covering just a lot of information. And it's really one of those balances between like, we want to make sure you're fully prepared up front, but also not totally overwhelm you. So we're working to kind of smooth that out as best we can. But we do cover a lot of info on day one. Do you want me to run through what some of that stuff is, just so you sort of have an overview of the things that we cover? Or? Dario's audio is pretty low right now. I think it was a little bit better with whatever you had previously. So I don't know what happened there. But I will go ahead. Yeah? Better. For sure, yeah. For sure. So it was just mentioned, I just saw something in the chat that said Dario's audio isn't coming through at all. So I apologize for anybody who's on this live video with us. I'll try and recap a little bit of what Dario just said. Basically that there is onboarding from both the employee perspective and the employer perspective. We work hard to prep on a few different levels to make sure that not only the department manager knows that this new employee is coming in, because obviously they were involved in the hiring process, but other employees who may be participating in their training or maybe not. This is simply an FYI of, hey, we're getting ready to welcome some new people to the team. So they're coming in and here's what role they'll be filling and here's a little bit of information about them. So trying to keep everybody posted about what is changing with our new hires is huge. I will tell you that I try and keep our onboarding process as relaxed and low key as possible. My nature is that I don't do well in a super structured environment. If it has to be like a speech that I'm standing at a podium, I'm very nervous. I'm nervous before these videos every time we do them. But if it's a low key, then I feel like that puts me at ease, which hopefully puts any new hires at ease. And so I always try and tell people, like, this is a relaxed day. Make sure that if you have questions, you stop me. If I'm going too fast, you stop me. I want to really set that stage that, like, we're in this together and this is a comfortable environment, so get comfortable here right off the bat. I cover a ton of stuff on the company side. The first probably hour and a half or so of new hire orientation with myself is all about the history of Wisper. Who our customers are, what that like customer demographic maybe looks like, where our customers are located primarily, what our network looks like, because for some people who had perhaps not heard of us previously, coming in and seeing how big our footprint of coverage actually is pretty surprising. We look at not only like where we came from, because we do have extremely humble roots. And honestly, as a longtime Wisper employee, I'm super proud to share that stuff. I remember Wisper when we were just like a company of 15 people. And it's really, really amazing to see all of our progress to where we are today. And I find a lot of joy in sharing that history with new employees as they come through. A piece of the puzzle, if you will, that is insane right now is all of the CAF expansion and essentially what our future looks like, where we're going. We have a really amazing path in front of us, and I'm a big believer in Nate's vision for the company. I feel like I have always been a big believer of what he has planned for us, and CAF is just sort of like propelling us way forward, way faster than what I ever imagined was possible. So I think it's a really exciting piece that I get to share with everyone. What that really flows perfectly into is essentially the piece of us as a company that I think we have to share with employees, because our purpose, our core values, and our culture that we are growing here at Wisper is just an amazingly big part of who we are. That's that whole people piece. You know, we are an internet service provider. We do provide customer service as well as part of those services, but a little bit deeper than that is that people side of things, and our core values and our culture really just tie that up so beautifully. And I think that employees need to know that from day one. We cover a lot of our important processes. We follow the traction model here. And so while I am no Gino Wickman, I am not trained as like a traction implementer. My purpose in updating people about that is so that they start to hear the terminology. They just get kind of an overview of what that looks like on a process level, and what we've done to implement that here at Wisper. Other policy and procedural things that frankly people have to know as being an employee of the company fall into that kind of like more routine type stuff. Timekeeping things. What does their training look like? What do performance reviews look like here? Like, how do we evaluate performance? How do we recognize our employees? Safety and reporting. And then obviously there's a big bundle of information regarding benefits. So we cover a lot of information on day one. And I usually talk to people about it like, we go from this stuff that's almost what I would call like super fluffy, a little bit more gray in terms of like not the actual processes and procedures and task-based things that people are used to going through during orientation. But it is truly an introduction to who Wisper is and who they are joining. So I think it's really important to know that. And then we kind of move into that policy and procedural type topics because frankly, people have to know that. Those are kind of like the big things that we cover. I'll maybe throw this in that like the things I'm not trying to do with orientation, I'm not making a huge effort to try and have people like memorize everything I say. It is 4 hours and it is a lot of information. And so what I use this time for is essentially like a dip in the Wisper waters. We go over this information multiple times, and I think it's a marketing note or something along those lines. And typically I think it's geared towards like when you're trying to gain customers, like, oh, there's 7 touches in order for someone to remember you or in order for someone to like buy into your services or whatever that looks like. And I feel like that can apply to what we're doing here with our employees. It takes multiple touches, multiple reminders, multiple times of someone saying it maybe in a little bit different variation, for people to understand what we truly do here and to really start to like get it on a bigger level. So this is just the first of many, and it's a pretty full day in that regard. Dario is still experiencing some audio issues, I think.
I may be back now. If
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. All right, so apologize for that, but
no biggie. So the thing I will say is also with this, because our morning is so incredibly heavy with information coming at people, I typically try and give people a little bit of a break in the afternoon. And this is one of those things that like is totally up to you and how you feel your structure needs to be with what your onboarding looks like. But sometimes by the end, you can start to see people like wearing out, right? I think the phrase is drinking from a water hose. And I don't want to just like spray someone to death with all of the information that they're coming in. So I think that they need that little bit of time to decompress. And usually the afternoon is very, very low key, running through emails or some self-paced training, some stuff that I don't want to call mindless because that sounds bad, but just something that doesn't take a lot of brain power because you've exhausted a lot of that absorbing it in the morning. So that's usually our day one. One of the big goals with what we've done with our onboarding process in general is that like we don't stop after day one. I don't consider my job done at 12:30 on Mondays simply because new hire orientation has ended that week. My job continues on because I think that it's my responsibility to continue to be there for those employees. And what that means is checking in with them throughout that first week and also throughout the weeks that follow. We have some structured checkpoints, obviously, with the way we do our performance review process, but my check-ins are not meant to be that. It's mostly supposed to be like, are you doing okay? How is training going? Do you need anything? And those are like literally the questions I ask of, do you need anything from me? Because I hope that those are the conversations they can be having with their managers and their trainers. But sometimes in the day-to-day, you get caught up in all that stuff and you don't think about that. And if somebody is honestly asking you, like, what can I help you with? Then I hope that I'm going to get a response from them if they do need some kind of help. So our onboarding extends way past day one, but obviously it's very heavy on the day one side.
So yeah, and I've seen kind of them come out of that day one onboarding process, and you can definitely tell it's a lot for them to take in. Oh yeah, you can see the look in their face because our onboarding process is not the typical onboarding process. They're used to that. Starting a new job, you come in, you fill out some paperwork, you're pointed to a workstation, and you get a little bit of training, and then you're just kind of released into the wild. So yeah. I think we do a great job of giving them much more. We give them the tools that they're going to need to hopefully be successful here at Wisper. So you can see it in their face, but they're usually when they come back like day two, they're ready to go right back into it, right? So they get the break, they catch up on some emails, they speak with other people in the departments that they're going to be working with, and then when they come back in day two, they're refreshed and they're ready to go again for day two of onboarding, which I'll go ahead and pass back to you and kind of let you explain what day two is.
Yeah, so usually by day two, because the afternoon is spent doing a little bit more of that like required training, there's obviously training that we have to do that's for compliance purposes, like sexual harassment and fire extinguisher training. Those are some things that everybody has to go through regardless of what their position is. But usually once we hit day two, we're starting to work through a little bit more solidified training process that is specific to the role in the department that this new employee is coming aboard with. So day two varies depending on the position you come in. Sometimes it is like field-based training. Sometimes it is going through some mock calls or just running through some of like the basic procedures that we have. We have a new training department actually, and this is one of those changes with we've had a lot of growth this year. I don't know if this has been shared on here, but we started this year with about 83 employees. So January of 2020, we had about 83, and today we sit at about 157. So we've almost doubled our employee count in just about 8 months, which is amazing and just insane with how many employees we've had come in. And it's been very exciting, and it's caused us to really have an opportunity to step back and say, like, what do we do to improve this process? Because previously we just simply weren't hiring to that quantity of employees. And so our training department is one of those new additions. Our training department is kind of stepping in at that day two mark, and we're really firming up what that standard training process looks like. And what that means is like, what does every employee need to know to be an employee of Wisper? More on like the task-based or system side of things. And so we do use an internal database here for our customer and our network information. And so they receive a couple-hour training, just like an intro, a basic training to that right on day two, so that from the get-go, they're getting into that system and starting to just kind of navigate around and see where some things are at. And those trainings are building out, and that's where it comes a little bit more role specific of, other positions have no need for our billing database, but some do. So those positions that do will start to go through that training as well. So it varies a little bit, but it is heavily focused on systems training as well as any kind of safety training that's required. We have a lot of guys who work in the field between our tower climbers and our installers. And so there's a lot of safety practices that we have to run through with them as well. And so that whole first week is really spent doing a lot of that on that side of things.
Yep. And yeah, you do an excellent job. I think everyone that's a part of our onboarding process does an excellent job, because usually by the time they reach me is when we're getting ready to do some of that training. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times when I ask, are there any questions? The first thing that usually comes out of everybody's mouth is that, oh, nope, Amanda did a great job in answering any and all questions. And we feel like we got the history of Wisper, and we understand the culture around here and what we're wanting to do and what we're trying to achieve. So it's like, well, if there's nothing that I can answer for you, let's hop right on into training then, right? So was there anything else that you were wanting to add towards the onboarding process that we have here at Wisper? Or?
No, I think when we talk about like why is onboarding important in general, this is an employee's like first look at a company, right? So, I mean, obviously the hiring process tells people a lot about the way you conduct yourself as a company, and we take a lot of pride in that as well. But onboarding is that point where it's kind of official, where it's like, oh gosh, I signed on the dotted line and I am actually going through with this. And so I think that just the reminder that this is your true first impression of your employee starting with you. And that's one of those things why we work so hard at making sure that all those pieces behind the scenes come together before an employee is actually with us, because it feels bad. It feels bad to me, at least, when we have a new hire come in and perhaps they don't have all the answers to their questions. We've worked so hard at this because we weren't as good at it before. And I will never say that I'm perfect, but I think we have seen a lot of improvements over the last couple of years in the way we do things. And some of that came from the fact that we weren't doing it so great before, and it didn't feel good and it didn't feel right. And it felt like it was maybe impacting what that impression was on that employee. And so some of those changes have come about from that. So just remembering that it's your time to shine, right? This is me and you now. Specific to Wisper, a couple other things I can think of. I think that our onboarding process is geared at trying to provide employees tools, right? So the tools on the history side so that they know where Wisper came from and who we are, and that's who they're part of now. The tools on the training side so that they can move forward and be super successful in their role. And also the like relational side, right? We work really hard to try and build relationship between manager and employee, but also like HR and employee. Wisper's HR department, one of the points of pride that we have is like, we don't view ourselves as your typical HR department. Like, I never want the impression of us to be like, uh-oh, HR is coming. You know what I mean? Like, duck, hide. I want people to be like, hey, Amanda, what's up? I'm so glad to see you. And I'm glad to see them too. So that's really what we're working really hard at, is the relationship building side of things. And all of that is essentially like a toolkit, a way for employees to be very, very successful here. And that's what we're working hard to build. I think our onboarding process is also really a commitment to our employees. You are more than just a person filling our seat, right? I actually had a new employee start with us yesterday, and he said that a couple of times during onboarding. And I got to tell you, nothing makes my heart swell more than that, than when I hear someone say, like, I have never experienced an onboarding day like this before in my life. That at every other job that I've had, they pretty much what you said, they bring me in and they plug me into a seat, and I'm expected to just kind of like produce for them. And what you're showing me with the care you're taking with me today is like that I mean more than that. And for me, that's just exactly the message, the feeling that we want our employees to feel. And so it's a commitment to them. And so I take that very, very seriously. You mentioned earlier that I think your audio was messed up when you mentioned this. But you mentioned earlier about having seen like a ton of changes to our onboarding process over the course of time. Like,
Yes.
You're right. The OGs of Wisper did not get this really amazing process, and that's okay. We're still here, right? So like, regardless of that, we lasted the test of time. But I think that that's one of the really cool things, is that our process is pretty much always changing. And I don't want to lose that piece of it. I don't think that I can ever fully check off on my list of to-dos like revise new hire orientation, because I think that something new is going to need to be updated pretty much regularly based on feedback and what our new employees' needs are. And I can tell you, as like a personal aside, I know for a fact in my head that that shift occurred actually a couple years ago. And you may remember this. We had a company all hands meeting. It would have been back in 2019. And at that point, we had already been making some changes to our onboarding process. But there was a moment that Nate had shared with the entire company, essentially like the history of Wisper from Nate's eyes. And seeing everybody make those connections, seeing everybody like lock in on what our vision is and what our purpose and our core values are, it was a really big moment for me, because that was like, this is what we need for every employee. And it's not feasible for Nate to do that with every single employee at this point in time, but I feel like that's where I can step in and as best I can share Nate's story and share Wisper's story, and then that way they feel that connection from the get-go. So that was kind of that like changing moment, in my opinion, for when the onboarding process really like took that next level. So I think that's it. I've been super wordy today. I'm sorry. I haven't had human interaction.
Oh, no, you've done an excellent job explaining that onboarding process of what we have here at Wisper. And yes, I did see it transcend and take off right around the same time that came about. And I think everyone has enjoyed it. And even us OGs, as you stated here at Wisper, I'm going to have I get to go through that onboarding process actually too. So I get to go through the onboarding process, and I get to go through the new hire orientation and some of the new hire training. So it's going to be an adventure for me also, since
Fantastic.
Yep, never got an opportunity to do it before. Yes. All right, so what that is going to do, that's going to go ahead and close up our show for today. But if you do have any comments or questions, you can always comment on our videos. We have quite a bit of videos in this catalog here on our Wisper YouTube channel for Wisper U. And so if it's a Wisper U question, feel free to contact us. If it's just a Wisper question in general, you can contact us here as well, and we'll try to get you an answer. But that is going to do it for us today. I'm Dario, and that is Amanda, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next Wisper Business Talk.
Thanks, Steve.
Have a good one. Shutting down.
Boop, 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 boop.